So we'd had a long history with this site and with this client. We worked on other projects together. And when he brought the project to us, he'd already had an apartment building approved on this site, but his heart really wasn't in it. He wanted to see if there were another way that he could do a development on this site that was economically viable, but also that meant something to him. He was looking for meaning. Our analysis of the site was you had this extraordinary old factory building, this storage building which used to store the milled timber, and we had the great old sawmill down the back. We spent years just looking at how we could turn this into a development and keep the industrial heritage of the site, and we looked at all different configurations, and the one that worked best was to turn what was effectively a 1,300 square metre site and turn it into 4 homes. It was really a process of subtraction. So we were pulling off the layers, the aggregated layers of fabric that had been built over the years to reveal this beautiful exposed, rich timber structure with the herringbone noggings. I mean, for me, that's better than television. You can sit there and you can stare at it and you get a favourite nail or a favourite nogging. And it's this endlessly beautiful thing to look at. So then we set up a whole bunch of rules. Everything was original fabric would remain the colour and the texture that it was. And anything that we put in the space then was painted, and generally painted black. So when you see something that's painted black, that's an addition into the space. But where you see something that's nice and raw, that is the original fabric of the factory building. Inherent in this building is all this embodied energy, the constructional energy and the embodied energy in just physically making those materials. To just erase that and junk that fabric and it all go to a big landfill area and then to fill it up with new concrete structures of apartment buildings just felt like an incredible waste when there was another viable solution, which was to keep the industrial heritage. So embodied energy and constructional energy amortise for another 100 or 200 years, but then understanding through the idea of good design or good architecture, putting in enough amenity into the building. So through the daytime, here we are, nearly the middle of the day, standing here, and there's a beautiful quality of light. The longer and broader story here is not only a heritage story, not only a contemporary architecture story, but it's an environmental story. There'd been a fire in this building in an early part of its life, so when we pulled some of that fabric apart, the fire damaged stuff that wasn't structurally capable to hold load, we then were able to keep and reuse. So we got that, again, that rich retelling of the story. Not only reuse the fabric, so great environmental initiative, so less fabric physically leaves the site, but a great way to hold and keep the story of what these buildings were, and even the stories, whether they're good or bad. The fire in here did a significant amount of damage, and then you can see some of that story retold on that rear wall. It also provided a great street frontage, but it was a frontage that had been added to and changed over time. So what we wanted to do is put an overlay of sophistication to it. It was a very bricky thing, so we wanted something that represented bricks to the street. But also we wanted to do that in a sophisticated way. So that's where the brick tile came about. So this black tile, this industrial building, it wanted to have this lovely moody feel about it. It was a wonderful way of interpreting this lovely weatherproof external facade. It straightened up the lines, it allowed everything to sit harmoniously together, but then presented this very contemporary view to the Victorian terrace across the way. So to turn it into homes, and knowing that a big component of homes is having the ability to move into gardens and outdoor space, every level had a really rich and meaningful external space to draw upon. So here at the front of the building, we've got the front garden that we present to the street as we are sitting here in dialogue with the house across the road. When we go downstairs to the lower level, we've got the wonderful side garden sitting here. You're protected from those big east and west orientations of sun. We've got the living or the dining terrace or the outdoor room off what is the main living area of the space where we go living, kitchen, dining, and then you can expand that space into that terrace. When we go up a level here, we have the main sleeping level or the private area of the home, and that has the grand balcony. We can get up there, we can get the sunshine, a great winter garden, a great afternoon garden, a great way to have a barbecue and celebrate with friends on that roof terrace that is incredibly private, but gives you the big sky and the big grand views of Sydney beyond. So those garden areas were fundamental to how we designed this. So not only did we give this, in terms of soft landscaping back to the site, 30 to 40%, but then we had all these other little terraces that sort of stepped and related to meaningful rooms all the way through the building, all the way through the levels of the building. So the design strategy for this building, I guess it starts with a site strategy and understanding where the solar orientation is. So north is effectively straight down the long axis of the building, but on this eastern facade we have a 12-metre high factory wall that was given to us from our neighbour. So we always knew that we were challenged from, I guess, from the morning all the way up to 11 o'clock. So how do we get that lovely rich brick wall to have enough light on it to be meaningful for not only habitation but for circulation, and also to create one of these joyous moments within the house? So what we've done is we've separated that by a nice healthy 2.5 metres where we have circulation with the stairs bridging between the floors, but those stairs effectively are hanging in what is conceptually one big void, 2.5 metres wide by the whole length of the building long. And then we've anchored that with a big skylight to the east that reaches up, and that allows light in from 12 metres above, and then you get this lovely falling light that gradually reduces in intensity as it moves down through the building. So when we get to this level or the level below, we get this lovely soft filtering of light. Everywhere and every time we made a design move, if we could sew in a grandness about this building, we would try to, because that's what its presence sort of suggested. Rather than being this big volume and this big presence with all these little spaces, it needed to have the personality to go with its physical form. So that space there with that skylight falling and the light falling down creates this wonderful big grand space that is a real joy not only to stand in but to move through the building. So we brought the idea to the client that, you know, where you have the grand bedroom, you then should have a grand bathing room to go with it. Whole rooms that you could go in and there was a grand or very gracious and generous quality about them. So you weren't cramped for space. In there, it was sort of the inverse of this palette here, which is lovely, dark and moody, rich and warm. There we wanted something all-encompassing, but a lot lighter palette, so that we've used the Carrara tiles, but that lovely fish scale tiles. You go in there and you feel that generosity of space. Again, there's lovely skylights that anchor your position in those bathrooms. And the bathing, and that's celebrated in a space that is completely all-encompassing. So the tiles are on the floor, roll up on the walls, but then also roll over the ceiling to give that wonderful sense and celebration of bathing. What is important for Balmain in the context of this building, in the greater narrative of this whole suburb, is that we keep the really important buildings that talk of the heritage of the building, the story of the site, the story of the suburb. Balmain was a working class suburb, power stations anchored either side, big chemical plants and, you know, butter making places and margarine making places. And to be able to have this building keep its story and retell its story slightly differently, I think is an important part of that overarching heritage story and history that needs to be told. It needs to be kept so that we can tell the story now, but also for future generations. So we feel a big part of what we do within these inner areas is maintaining the story so it can be kept and told where it's important to do so.